Welcome to LabMinutes.com and our lab video series in Cisco ACS. You can find a complete list of ACS videos on our website by clicking on the link above and sign up for our newsletters to receive the latest video updates. In this video, we will configure radius authentication on Cisco ACS for AnyConnect VPN, and we will also try to use ACS to push down VPN group policy and per user ACLs to the VPN users. Here's our lab setup. We have a Cisco ACS version 5.4 installed at the IPF.100, a domain controller at the IPF.40, and we have a firewall VPN that has the inside connected to our switch on the VLAN 10 and the outside connected to our test machine at the VLAN 11. Now for our test machine, we're going to have an AnyConnect client install, and for our test users, we have 3 users. 2 of them are going to be located on the AD. The first user is admin 1 as part of the network admin user groups. It's going to be assigned a class attribute OU equal network admin, with network admins corresponds to the group policy names on the ASA, as well as downloadable ACL that will deny ICMP but allow everything else. Now for the user support 1, that's part of network support, will be assigned to a network support group policies, and all he has access to is going to be ICMP only. Local 1 is the user on the ACS itself that's part of local group, a local admin, and he will be assigned a network admin group policies and also will be denied ICMP but allow everything else. So just to give you a little bit of background, when you configure web VPN with multiple group policies by default, there's a possibility the user will be able to see all the different group policies showed up on the web interface when you log in as part of the dropdown, and if you're not careful, the user might be able to choose the group that they don't belong to and get more network access or privilege than they're supposed to. Another way that you can kind of address that is to come up with a unique group URL, and then you assign that to each of your users. But again, those URL can be exchanged among the users or get discovered by the users, and even that way the user will be able to log in to a different group policies. So by doing it this way, as far as having the group policy assigned down to ACS per user, you pretty much eliminate the user having to have a knowledge of what groups there belongs to. So you don't even see a drop down as shown in this picture here. All they need is just to enter their credential, and then on the back end, we're going to use the ACS to place that user into an appropriate group policy. So our lab has been pre-configured with basic web VPN on the ASA. So let's hop onto the firewall just to show you what we have configured. If we do show run user, we have a single username called Cisco created. And we also have a IP local pool for assigning IPs. We have our split tunnel access list that's going to allow user to access 172.16 subnet. We have our web VPN configuration, and by default we have a tunnel group list enabled, so user can choose between the VPN groups. And we do show run tunnel group. You see here we have 2 tunnel group created, network admin and network support, and each of those has corresponding group alias that will show up as part of the dropdown. And we also have corresponding group policies for our network support that does not allow split tunnel, so it's tunnel everything, and the network admin that is allow a split tunnel. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a quick test and make sure our current configuration works with local authentication, and that's what we have configured so far. So here on our Windows 7 test machine, we're going to connect to our VPN at 1111. So connect. Okay, we're just going to accept certificate, and you can see right here with our 2 tunnel groups that we have created, network admin and network support, we can first try to log in as a network admin, then with the username Cisco and password Cisco. And again, these are the local accounts on the ASA. And let's have a ping going to our domain controller. And I can see it's trying to establish VPN connection. And now we are connected to the VPN, and if we just take a quick look at the stats here, got assigned the IPF 11.32, and since it's a network admin, we get a split tunnel as well. Okay, you can see our ping is now going. So let's log out of that, and then reconnect using our second group. And now instead of network admin, we're going to switch over to network support. And then Cisco, and then OK. Okay, now we're getting our ping. And now if we look at the route detail for the network support, we do not have split tunnel. That's why I show up as all 0. So this is exactly what I mean by if you not lock this down, a single user can potentially lock into any one of the groups that you have configured, just like how we did it right here with the user named Cisco that lock into both network support and network admin. Okay, so let's disconnect. So let's start our config on the ASA. First, we're going to need to make sure our firewall, since we're going to have the ASA authenticated against ACS using Radius, we need to make sure the network device, let me walk back in since it's a timeout. So we need to make sure the firewall is added as a Radius network device. So under the network devices here, we have our firewall, and so far we only have TACX used. Now we're going to enable Radius with, again, share secret of Cisco. And here, just to show you that we also have a local user, local one, as part of local admin identity group that we're going to use as our third test user in this lab. Okay, now moving down to policy element, what we're going to do is to create a device filter for our VPN firewall. Then we can easily use the device type firewall that we had created as part of the device or network device group, but not all the firewall might be a VPN firewall. So just to pick out the certain firewalls as a VPN firewall, we can create a device filter, call LM, say VPN, and then we're going to pick our firewall from the based on device name. And here with firewall 1, click OK. Click Submit. Now we're going to create a downloadable ACL. As described in the diagram here, we got deny, one that's deny ICMP, and one that's only allow ICMP. So let's create our first one called LM no ICMP. And let me just copy and paste and make sure there's no typo. So first we deny ICMP any, and then we permit IP any. Submit. We'll create next one called LM ICMP only, and this one will be a simple permit ICMP any. Make sure there's no typo, and then submit. Now we are going to create an authorization profiles that will use the downloadable ACL. So click create. This first one is called LM VPN, and this one's going to be for network admin. So network admin, and then we'll select our downloadable ACL, and that is no ICMP. And then on top of that, we said we are going to push down OU equal network admin, and that is under Radius attribute, and it's going to be type or attribute class. Click OK, and for the value is OU equal network admin. And again, just to reiterate, this corresponds to the group policy network admin right here. So you can actually just copy that and make sure there's no typo. And don't forget to add. Submit. We'll create another one for our network support called LM VPN-network support. Downloadable ACL ICMP only. And then Radius attribute this time, the value is going to be OU equal network support. Okay, add and submit. Next, we're going to move down to access policy. So since this is considered a new service, so we might as well create a new access service with the name LM VPN, and this will be type network access. Next, and for VPN, we are dealing with PAB, so that's all we need to allow, which is PAB. We'll click Finish, and let's go ahead and activate the service under Service Selection Rule. Now we can create a rule called LM-VPN. Protocol, it's going to be Radius. And we specify the create a device filter already called LM-VPN. Okay, we're going to drop that under LM-VPN. And as far as here under LM-VPN, well, actually we have to save that to activate it. Click on Identity under LM-VPN. Now we have to specify the identity source that we want to use to authenticate the user, and we can just use what we created in the previous video with the cert AD local to cover both certificate-based and user-based, although we're not dealing with certificate-based authentication here. Save, and then we do authorization policies. And now we have to customize our conditions, since by default it's just compound condition. Then we're not even going to use compound, so move that out of the way, and then we add protocol. We're going to condition based on AD user groups as well as the local identity groups. Okay, create. Now for our first rule, this is going to be for the network admin user group, so we'll call LM-VPN network admin. Protocol, again kind of redundant but doesn't hurt, so radius. For the AD external group, this is going to be for network admin, and if all those conditions are met, we're going to assign a authorization profile called LM-VPN network admin. Okay, next we do one for network support, so what we can do is duplicate below. It's going to be network support. Protocol radius, group name, that has to be changed to network support. Authorization profile has to be changed as well to network support. Okay, and our last one for our local user. So we'll call LM-VPN local admin. Same protocol, although we're not going to use AD external group. Instead, we're going to use the local identity group, which is local admin. And we said we want the local admin to have network admin authorization profile. So make sure the default is not permit access, because we do not want it to accidentally be allow access because it's matched the default rule. Okay, and then save changes. Okay, now we're going to move on to a configuration on the firewall. So first we need to add a radius servers to our firewall. So AAA-server, we're going to name it radius, protocol radius, and then we're going to do AAA server. By default it's inside interface, but you can also specify it. Host 172.168.132.100, which is the IP of our ACS. And then some of the parameters you can do is key. Share key is Cisco. And then you can do retry interval 2. For example, you can also have timeout if you wish to modify the timeout before the server is marked unreachable. You can do timeout, let's say 5 seconds. Okay, now if you look back at our web VPN configuration, we have the tunnel group list enabled. However, now that we are going to be using ACS to assign the group, we no longer want that options to be presented to the user. So what we want to do is to remove the tunnel group list. Should know of that. And also, now that we're no longer going to have separate lock-in pages or tunnel groups for users, since everybody's going to be now coming in through the default tunnel groups, so we can do show run all, and then let's look at what default tunnel group that we're going to use. And here let's find one that's relevant to what we're doing, which is the web VPN right here. As you can see, by default the web VPN group is using local authentication, so we need to change that to use our new radius server. So that would be authentication server group and radius, pointing to our radius server. So if you do show run tunnel group, you see, although we have these other tunnel groups configured, we're not even going to use it. From now on, everybody's going to be coming in through the default tunnel group. Okay, now we have that configuration in place, we can start testing. So the first thing we want to try is to log in using the local account to the ASA to make sure that we no longer utilize the local user of the ASA. Okay, connect anyway. You can see we no longer see the drop downs to select the user group. We're going to use the username Cisco, password Cisco, and you can see immediately we failed in authentication, although at the beginning of the lab we saw that we can use the account to log in successfully. And that's now because we no longer point to the local user to the ASA, but instead we are making a radius authentication to the ACS. So instead of using Cisco, let's use the admin1 account and log in. You can see we are now authenticating. While we're waiting for that, let's switch over to monitoring and reporting. In the background, you can see the VPN is connected already. And let's check on our authentication log. And you can see here the first attempt with the username Cisco get passed on to the ACS for the radius authentication, and obviously Cisco is not a valid user on the ACS or the AD. Now we have the admin1 successfully log in. Let's take a quick look at the detail. And here authentication method for VPN is PAP, class OU equal get pushed down, and as well as the per user ACL with LM no ICMP. For authentication detail, got PAP, ASCII, username. Authentication is coming from firewall. The NAS port type is virtual. Authorization profile matched the network admin. We authenticate against AD, and authorization rule is also a network admin. Okay, and these are all the groups, and we've seen this multiple times already. Okay, now going on to the firewall and show VPN session AnyConnect, just to look at the detail of the connection. The IP has been assigned is 1132, which came from the pool. IP is usually coming from is 111.2. Group policy, you can see it gets placed under network admin group policy, while the tunnel group, the user is coming in through the default web VPN group, which is the default group. Okay, you guys want to do show access list. Just look at the content of the downloadable ACL that was pushed down from the ACS, and you can see right here with deny ICMP any with permit everything else. Okay, so now you can see although we're connected on the VPN, our ping is not going through. That's because it's being denied. However, if you're trying to browse, let's say 32.100, which is the ACS itself, you can see the anything but the ICMP traffic or activity is working. Okay, so that's pretty much verify our admin1 user. Next, let's try to disconnect from here and log in using support1. Connect. So if admin1 is support1, shows 1, then okay. Okay, and now we are connected. So again, go back to the ACS. Take a look at the authentication log. Here we see the LM ICMP only. ACL was pushed down. And again, it says right here as show up as a Cisco AV pair. And now the OU equal becomes network support. Everything else I'm not going to go through since it looks pretty much identical as what we saw before. And now on the ASA, again, do a show VPN session AnyConnect. We see here the group policy is now show up as a network support, and the user is still coming through a default web VPN tunnel group. Okay, now on the test machine itself, you can see the ping is now going through since all we are allowing is ICMP. And if you're trying to browse the web to our ACS server at the 172.1632.100, you can see that we are not connecting. Again, we do show access list on the firewall. Also, the user is being allowed is ICMP traffic only, and there's like 67 hit counts already. So now, for our third test user, which is local to ACS, let's go ahead and connect. Connect, and our user is local 1. So let's go connect. Now going to the ACS to see if it's coming through already. It did, and this is a username local 1. Same thing, being push OU equal network admin with no ICMP. And you can see this time identity store is being used as internal user instead of AD. Okay, and our ping should stop right there in the background because we are not allowing ping. If we look at the ACS, it's deny ping. And we look at the VPN session. Again, we're back onto the network admin for the local 1 user and still use the default tunnel group. Okay, last verification step is to go to the ACS. You can see we can browse to the ACS from this particular host. Okay, just to show you real quick, back on our authorization profile, let's just pick one of these under the radius attribute. There's a lot more radius attribute that you can use with Cisco, whether it's IPsec or AnyConnect VPN, that you can assign down from ACS to the firewall and to the ASA and to the user. So you can look at things like VPN right here, Radius Cisco VPN attribute, and some things that you can configure. As you can see, there's a lot of options that you can push down from ACS as part of Radius reply, and most of these corresponds to the configuration option that you can do under the group policy. So things like banner, client firewall, IK keep alive, DNS scope, and things like UDP port. So as you can see that when you use the ACS to assign group policies to the VPN user, you essentially take away users' ability to attempt to lock in or switch between the VPN groups, and at the same time reduce the configuration as far as when you have to configure the tunnel group right here. Instead of having a separate tunnel group, you just basically utilize the default tunnel group, and that can save a lot of configuration, especially if you have a lot of VPN user group to deal with. So that wraps up our video on ACS 5.4 AnyConnect VPN with Radius Authentication Authorization. You can visit our website to view an extensive list of our lab videos and sign up to get access to additional lab contents. Thank you for watching LabMinutes.com, and I'll see you guys in the next video.